This is the second part of our chapter. It's the payment part. The payment part, we will cover 8 payment function. These are the 8: PMT, IPMT, PPMT, NPAR rate. Also, we cover the net present value and the future value. Also, the present value. So let's get started. Before we start, I want to mention the present, how to name cells. We already covered in chapter 2 how to give a range name. Now just the cells. If we want to have it from our selection, so we need to define name from selection. Select it first and then insert define name from selection, and to the Excel where it can find the names, in our case in the upper row. Say OK. Now the cells, instead of A2, they have name that of BV. That's helpful. Why? Because instead of calling this number an A2 doesn't have any meaning. However, if we call it a BV, it will have a meaning for us. Now let's start explaining the function. The first function is the PMT. PMT means the periodic payment for a loan. It means how much we are going to pay per month if we have a loan with that interest and for that loan. For example, if you are going to borrow 298,000 from the bank and you're going to borrow it for 30 years. 30 years equal 30 years multiply it by 12, it's equal to 360. So this is the 360 come from. And also the rate or the interest rate is 48%. So how much you need to pay each month? We insert equal, and then the PMT function will open a parenthesis and start inserting our argument. What's the first argument Excel asks for is the rate. So we insert the rate. Make sure that the rate, if you are paying monthly, the rate is monthly. Usually the case, the rate are giving annually, and you need to convert it to monthly. So make sure if you are giving an annual rate, convert it to a monthly rate. If you are going to, which is usually the case, calculate the monthly payment. Now let's move on to the next argument, which is how many period, and usually calculated by the years multiplied by 12. Now we'll go to the third argument, which is the present value. The present value, how much you want to borrow now, how much is going to your bucket now. We'll close it and then we'll insert. So now we have it. If we want to borrow this amount for this long at this rate, we need to pay 1,739 monthly. Notice that there is here a positive and this one is negative. It can't be both positive or can't be both negative. One of them has to be negative and the other one has to be a positive. Why? Because when you borrow, this cash will go in your bucket, so it's inflow cash, so it's a positive. And when you pay it, it will be a negative because it's going out of your bucket. However, if the bank is the one who using this function, so it will, this amount that you will borrow it will go out of the bank bucket, so it will be a negative, and the one you will pay, it will be, or the monthly payment, it will be a positive number. Let's go back to our case. The PMT, we didn't, in Excel, we doesn't have like to insert the argument through cells. We can insert the function through this one. We can select the payment, the PMT. So the PMT is in the financial, and then we will go to the letter P to quickly select the PMT, which is here, and then we will start to enter our argument. For example, the rate is 0.0 or 0.475 percentage. This is our rate. How many periods? Is 360. What's our present value? It's 2080 or 98,000. And the future value here, if you see that it's not in bold, that means we can omit it. And the default, if we doesn't have anything in, it means 0. What they mean by future value? If there is an outstanding principals at the end of the period you are going to pay the bank, this is what the future value means. For example, you will pay each month, and at the end of the month you will pay a big amount. That's a future value. And then you need to fill out, or you might fill out the type. The default for the type is 0. What does it mean? 0 means that the payments are done at the end of the period. However, if the payments are done at the beginning of the period, you will have, or you need to insert 1. But because the common way is paying at the end of the period, so that's why the Excel shows 0 as a default. Now we have very close number. Why? Because there is a slightly different between the between our rate. That's why we have different number. Here it's 47.92, and here I put 47.50. But if I put 92, I will have the same result. Now let's move to the second one. The second one is the IPMT. It's the IPMT. It's the interest part of the loan. How much interest we are going to pay. The IPMT is a part of the PMT. You are going to pay for the bank this amount, but how much of this amount is interest and how much of this amount is principals? This is what these two function all about. So the IPMT, it's not a different from the PMT. We'll start to insert the rate and then the period. The period here, notice it's not the NPER, the one we have used here. It's period. It's which period are we going talking about? For example, is it the first period or is it the second period? It's different. Here, all the periods are the same, but the IPMT and the PPMT, the periods are different. The first period will have a lot of interest and a little of principal, but at the end of the periods, the interest is less and the principals is large. In our example, we will choose the 43rd period, and then the Excel wants us to insert the number of period, how many months we're going to pay, and then the present value, the future value, and the type as default as we talked earlier. Now we will show the PMT. There is no different. Rate, period, number of period, and then a present value and future value. Notice if we sum these two numbers, notice what number we will have. See here that we have the same as the PMT. Why? As I told you before, the IPMT, it shows us how much interest, how much from our payment or monthly payment is interest, and how much the PMT shows us how much of it is principal. Now let's move on to the NPER. The NPER, for example, you need it if you know how much money you need and you know the rate, but you don't know, and you know how much you can pay per month, but you know for how long you can take the loan. And this is the NPER can help us for. So let's do the NPER. The NPER, it's easy. It's short for number of periods. So we'll insert the rate, V, PMT, V. And notice here, because I haven't used a comma, the Excel did not figure out that I have moved from the rate. So the rate, the PMT, and then the present value. Now we'll close it. We'll see. Before I move on, I talked earlier here about the negative and positive. Make sure here when you calculate the number of periods that your PMT and PV have different different figures. For example, if this one is minus, this one will be positive. Why? Because if they both minus or both negative, it's impossible that to happen, and that will give us a crazy number for the number of period, or a wrong number of that. So make sure that one of these are minus, because this is a positive outflow from this one. The same case in the number of period is applied for the rate. The rate will calculate how much interest rate we are paying, and this is by knowing how long we're going to pay for the loan, and how much our payment, monthly payment, and how much is the loan. Make sure that the loan is different than if the loan is positive, the payment is negative, and vice versa. Now let's move to the present value. The present value, suppose your client thinking of investing in some assets, and he needs 400,000 riyal, and he wants to have a loan for 10 years. 10 years mean 120 months, and the monthly rate is 48%. He or she will try to decide whether she will have an outstanding payment at the end of the period or not. And now let's help her by seeing how much the bank can lend her. So this is by using the present value function. By using the present value function, we will help our client to know how much the bank might lend her. Now we will enter the rate, and then the PMT, and then, the number of period, and then the PMT, and first we will see if the future value is 0, and here we will see if the future value is negative. We need to put equal for, and now we'll start answering the and now the PMT, and then the future value. Now our client need to decide either to have to have now 346 100,000 now for supplying her assets. However, if she must need the 400 and she can't like bring the other 50,000, she must like pay an outstanding amount and get now 400,000. So either to try to figure out how to bring a 50,000 riyal, or to pay at the end of the period 100,000 riyal. Now let's move on to the net present value. The net present value, because as you know, the value of money decreases through time, so the net present value will calculate how much this money of future cash flow worth now. Suppose your father says, either I will give you 250,000 riyal now, or I will give you 100,000 riyal in each of the following year. So what you are going to decide? Either to have 205,000 riyal now, or you're going to have 100, which is calculated 300,000 riyal in the 3 following years. So to calculate it, we need first the rate and then the cash flow. Now it's worth 240,000 riyal. We can use the defined name help us, that we can name this as cash flow. We tell the Excel that the name is in the upper row. And also here, for example, if I want to give it a name, we will tell Excel that this 12% name is on the left column. So the Excel already figured it out. And then if we press here, we see that it's named discount rate, and if we select these 3, we'll set as cash flow. And see here, if we say NPV and open a parenthesis, select here discount rate and the cash flow. How much they worth now? They worth 240,000 riyal. Now let's move on to the PMT with the future value. The PMT with the future value means if I want to pay, if I want to lend or borrow money with or without an outstanding principals. This is not very different than the others. It's just if you understand the relationship between these numbers and what these numbers mean, you will be fine. So the PMT without a standing number, how much you are going to pay per month if you are borrowing this amount of the bank, but on one time you will not have any outstanding principal, but in the other case you will pay at the end of the period 50,000 riyal. So let's see in the first case, if you doesn't have a future value, how much you will pay monthly. So PMT equal PMT, will open, will insert the rate, the number of period, the present value, which is how much we're going to borrow, and then the future value. And notice here that the future value must be minus, because this you are going to pay for it. So it's something going out of your bucket, but here's something you will borrow, so it will go inside your bucket. So make sure you have the right sample or for the future value. Now we will see the case if we doesn't have a future value, or if we have a future value. So PMT. We'll insert the rate, number, and the present value, the future value. Then we'll close it. Here, because it says without standing principal, we need to erase the future value. If we have a future value of 50,000, our outstanding, we will pay 1,700. If we doesn't have, if we have it, we will pay less monthly, but in total we will pay more because here it's at 50,000. So monthly we'll pay less, just less. The difference is, if you see the difference, it's very few. It's just 52 riyal each month. Either you pay more 50 riyals each month, or you pay at the ending of the period. If the period's 50,000 riyal. So you choose. Now the last thing is the future value. The future value is very helpful if you want to think how much you will get if you invest your money. Suppose you are going to invest 100,000 riyal and you're going to invest it in 5 years. Before we start to entering the formula, because you are going to invest it, we put it in minus because you are this money is going out of your bucket. Now the annual rate. If the annual rate is 5%, we need to convert it to monthly rate, which is this rate divided by 12. Also, the number of period, we cannot use years, we need to convert it to months, which is multiply it by 12. Usually the type is 0, and the PMT, I don't want to pay anything monthly. I want just to invest 100,000 and see in the future how much we will get. If we calculate how much the future value of our investment, we can use the future value function and insert the rate, and see here that we have chosen the monthly rate, and now number of period, and then the PMT, which is 0, and now the present value, which is how much money we will invest now. So if we invest 100,000, now we will get after 5 years 128,000. The same example, however, the investment is not going to be in the beginning. No, I will invest monthly. How much I'm going to have at the end of the 5 years? So future value, and then I will insert the rate, the number of period, and the PMT, and I don't have any present value, and the type is as default. We'll close it. So if you invest 3,000 riyal on each month in 5 years, you'll have 240,000 riyal. I want to show you also another way that's about investment that we can use the PMT function. For example, you have a goal. You have a goal to collect 204,000 riyal after 5 years, but you don't know how much you can invest monthly. The PMT is a good function to use. So the PMT will insert the rate, and then we will insert the number of period, and then we will insert the present value, which is 0 for us. We doesn't have any present value, but we will invest in the present value, the future value is what we want to have at the end of the period, and make sure it's a positive because you want to have it. It's an inflow for you. You want to have it a positive for you. Now we will close it and see. So if you have a goal to have this amount of cash after 5 years, you need to invest a 3,000 Riyal monthly. This is the end of part 1. I hope you enjoy it. Practices and then upload it in a Blackboard. If you have any question, do not hesitate to contact me or contact Mrs. Arij. Thank you and good luck.